You got it? All right, we're going to get this meeting started. If we could. Is this microphone working? Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. This is the Hendersonville Board of Zoning Appeals meeting of August 7th, 2023. First thing we're going to do is take roll call. We'll start. We have Mr. Jim Waters, who is our connection with the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Thank you for being here, Jim.
Paul Guthrie.
Paul Guthrie.
Ty J.
I'm Don Ames. I'm the chairman. We have two staff members.
Timothy Witten.
Great.
And we have hiding in the back the city attorney.
Lance Ray.
All right. We only have one item on here. I'd like to start by saying I had over 30 emails. This is obviously a very interested organization out here. It's a very contentious item. But I want to make it clear there were a couple of people in the emails that I don't believe understood what the Board of Zoning and Appeals do. I have mentioned this a couple times at the last couple meetings that were on this topic. Our business, our authority tonight is to decide on and only on the height of the dome. I know people are very concerned about traffic. I know they're concerned about the police barn and so forth. And there will be other opportunities if the height gets approved for people to speak out about those items as well. But tonight the decision is going to be on the height of the dorm. That's what the Board of Zoning and Appeals do. We make decisions relating to people that want exceptions to what the rules are. We do things. This is a volunteer organization, and we do our best to try to decide what's best. The reason almost all of the emails were very respectful, and I appreciate that. A couple people thought that it was ridiculous. They mentioned that it was ridiculous to even be having this. And the Board of Zoning and Appeals is here for all citizens who want to do things like have a fence in a slightly different place from what the law might allow, or a swimming pool, or an outbuilding of some sort. That's what we're here to do, is to decide if it's appropriate to go ahead and make an exception to any of the rules. And so that's what we're doing here tonight. I just want to make sure you understand that. A lot of people have signed up to talk, and what I'm going to do is ask that you keep your discussion at the podium to about 2 minutes. Otherwise, we'll be here till after midnight. And I hope that will be all right with everybody if you can keep your discussions short. We're going to start by talking about the minutes from the last meeting. If any of the board members want to make a comment on that.
I make a motion that we vote to approve the July 10th minutes.
Okay. Is there a second? A second. And Paul seconds it. Thank you very much. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So the minutes are approved. We only have the one item to talk about tonight. That's the appeal case number 0823-1M. A request by Catalyst Design Group on behalf of Tennessee United Soccer Coalition for variance via conditional use permit to the building height of at 1332 and 1334 Drakes Creek Road, which is Volunteer Park. We're going to start by having the public hearing. I'll call your name, and if you would come to the microphone, give your name and your address, please. We'll start with Todd Sears.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Quick question. I understand that there's a new proposal being presented tonight. I was under the impression, I think many of us were under the understanding that Tennessee United would speak about the new proposal, and then the public comments would follow.
Okay, is that?
That's what I anticipated doing, if that's okay with the chair.
Well, if the board will agree with me, we'll have the applicant speak first, and then we'll go back to the public hearing.
Okay.
Are you all right with that, Paul?
Yeah.
Okay, I am too, so we'll do that. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, and I was signed up on the list, but we
You're
anticipated.
farther down, apparently.
That's right, I'm further down. So, well, thank you. And honestly, it's amazing to see this many folks here just taking part in the public process. So whether you're in opposition or in favor of it, I commend you for coming out and participating in the process here. So my name is Andrew Walters. I'm with Catalyst Design Group. We are the applicant and the consultant civil engineering landscape architecture design firm that has been hired by Tennessee United to prepare this application and plans and calcs related to this project. I personally have involvement with USC. My wife's actually on the board, has served as a treasurer for a number of years, and our son played for over 10 years in Tennessee United. So we have affection and love for the club. It goes beyond sort of my professional capacity, but knowing what I do for a living, they asked us to be involved in that role. So that's who I am. Just a brief discussion of the history before I get into some of the slides. And I guess part of this would be a question too. I know there's been some correspondence back on the RFP process, and I think some neighbors may have had questions or concerns about that. So I don't know if that would be appropriate for the chair or for Timothy to read that in. But there was an RFP that went out, and Tennessee United was one of two proposals that came back on that front, and they were selected. That was approved by that board and the city board on February 28th. From there, we took that same concept that was approved, and that had contained sort of a marketing video and some graphics. That went to the Parks Board on April 24th. At that time, we started to hone in a little bit more on the design, size, and type of the dome and the structure we want, and came before the BZA initially on June 5th. And at that time, we had what was called a four-field plan. And when you see the slides, you'll note that. But I'm referring to the four-field plan that was done at BZA. That would be 4 new fields. One of them was contained inside a dome structure. And during that meeting, there was a lot of neighbors that spoke. We are neighbors in Hendersonville. I live in Hendersonville myself, so we were very sensitive to those comments, and we decided to defer at that meeting. And on June 28, we met with Mr. Sears actually in his home, and a lot of neighbors that came, so appreciate their graciousness for hosting us. By that time, we had sort of developed some other alternative perspectives, which again, I'll show some because that was some of the questions that came up on June 5th. But we heard a lot of neighborhood feedback, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the slides. We decided then heading into July, we didn't have enough time to sort of make those modifications, so we went ahead and deferred at the July 10th meeting. Which brings us to this last weekend. We did prepare this slideshow and actually presented it to a group of some neighbors. I'm not sure how many were able to get the word out because of vacations and start of school week. It was kind of a hectic week. But we did have that follow-up meeting and presented this alternate plan that Todd referred to. That was last Friday. And so now, here we are before the BZA, and what we're proposing today is a 3-field plan, so 3 new fields. One of those happens to be a dome structure. So if we can go ahead and go to the first slide. Do I have control over that? Okay. Perfect. You want me to? Is that easy? Okay. Mr. Chairman just read this, but I'll sort of summarize as well that our request tonight is for a variance as conditional use permit as an accessory structure to a government facility and is only required due to the average building height exceeding the allowable height per the code. All other zoning and land use requirements are fully compliant with the zoning code. And that's an important distinction as we go forward tonight to keep that in mind. The applicant is requesting height considerations on a new indoor sports dome facility where the average height of the dome is 47.5 feet, which is 12.5 feet more than the allowable 35-foot height in the estate residential zoning. So some context, and we realized this when we went to the neighborhood meeting on June 28th, we probably didn't do a good enough job of sort of framing this and helping folks understand what the long-term vision and plan for this park was. So back in 2015, the city developed this master plan. And this was out. I remember seeing this on a sign outside the park there for a number of years. But one of the things you'll notice is the full, and I'm going to try this pointer here, but the full development of fields all the way up to close to the property lines. Essentially, this plan at the time was maximizing all of the available land. And you'll note that, this would have involved a lot of the same disturbance that we initially came with, which is along this Arrowhead property line here. And that was on file from 2015 and really was part of the basis of when Tennessee United came with the proposed and the response to the RFP. This was what we had in mind. This was the fulfillment of this plan. So when we came on June 5th, again, this was the initial four-field plan. So when you hear the four-field plan, that's what we're referring to. And just this is blown out, so you see all of the details here. But this is 4 new fields with a dome. So the dome structure being there in red. Sorry, a little hard when you're this far away to not be shaky. Some other plan details with this. The property space again was maximized for the field use, and that was consistent with that 2015 master plan. The dome property setback was 20 feet. Now again, that's fully compliant with zoning code. In this district, you're required to have a 20-foot setback, so we were meeting that. But you'll notice this has limited area for any type of public open space or amenities. It's pretty much jam-packed with fields and turf area for the fields. And that was some of the feedback that we got from the neighborhood. This likely was going to have a large impact to the vegetation along the Arrowhead properties. One of the things that came to our attention in the meeting we had with the neighbors was the vegetation here, actually from aerial, is very thick and lush. But a couple folks mentioned that vegetation along that property line actually was likely onto the park's property and not on the neighbor's property, which meant that any disturbance that we were doing would have likely caused an impact to those trees. And that was something that was concerning for us. Of course, we didn't have a detailed tree survey along that row here at this conceptual level, but we heard that feedback, and that was something that we were sensitive to. The other thing we heard is just in context with the fields being close to neighborhoods is the potential for light and noise impact. And certainly the new indoor facility wouldn't have much of that because most of the noise and lights are all outside the facility, inside the facility. But the turf field next to it here would have certainly had some light and noise impact to those properties. And we were sensitive to that. And one of the big takeaways of that meeting was it looks like you guys are jamming a lot of stuff on this property. We have a stream buffer that we explained cuts through the property, so there's a 30-foot buffer that we can't touch coming off the stream, so it does sort of impair some of the usability of the property. But we were sort of hemmed in between that line and that setback line as far as where we could place these fields. And so, again, I'll go to more of a blow-up view. This is sort of in that key area that we're talking about. One thing to really note here is, again, in the four-field plan, if we did not do a dome structure at all, and this was just a turf field, we would have all those same impacts that we're referring to tonight. So we would have vegetation impacts along this line. We would have light poles 80 feet tall that could all be done by right. We would not be at this BZA hearing to do those four fields plans. And that's an important distinguishment. If this does not pass tonight, more than likely the next best option would be a four-field option that comes back and goes straight to Planning Commission on the merits of the zoning and the land use, which again we believe is fully compliant with the land use. So we recognize that, and we probably didn't discuss that in great detail with the neighbors at the time. Again, we were sort of just hearing and listening to a lot of the feedback we got. But thinking about this, I want folks to visualize this being a grass turf field with this much buffer and this much light and sound potential against these properties. And so we did that. We took analysis of that and took stock of that. And to be honest with you, we're really excited to come back and present this plan. And again, this was presented, this show was presented to some of the neighbors and some of our group on Friday last week. But this is the plan before you that we're asking for your support at the BZA here. This is a revised plan, 3 fields with the dome versus the 4-field plan essentially that we just looked at. What we're proposing here is over 120 foot, and we would say a minimum dome setback of 120 feet off the property line. For context and reference, I believe the Burris Elementary, sort of that corner of the gym, is about 60 to 65 feet, just looking at some aerial imagery. So it's a substantial setback off that property line. This area would have a significant amount of new area for public open space and amenities, and so you see this green space in between the walking trail and the building. And we have a lot of ideas for that, but we would want to hear from the neighborhood and have more discussions about that. Anything from seating areas.
Point on that again.
Yeah, so this little green strip, sorry, it's very difficult. This far away. I might be a little nervous. This green strip right inside that.
Well,
Between the walking trail and the building itself.
Can you also show where the horse barn is?
Yes, ma'am. The white building right there is the existing structure, and we can talk about that in a minute. So the plan was to increase a lot of open space. So again, that's one of the benefits of this plan versus any 4-field option. The 4-field option had everything wedged in there, given the space that we had between the stream and the property. And so, one of our ideas is, if you go to Geodis Park now, there's a small little gathering area outside on the north end of the park where there's turf fields, kids can kick around, people play cornhole. There's all kinds of public access benefits, and that was one of the things that we heard from the community when we met was they would love the idea of a walking trail and some public park space, and that was really in their minds, and I understand that, I'm sympathetic to it. They perceive this as a public park, and we wanted to go back and sort of honor that with what we were proposing for this design. So again, that's something we would love to continue to engage and talk through with the neighbors and the community as far as what they foresee that area could be. One of the major benefits is all of this landscaping in this proposal can be retained. We wouldn't propose any disturbance here. I know we're showing a trail, but that could be done anywhere in that zone between the building and the property line. And so all of the vegetation here could be retained. In fact, we could enhance that and modify it. That was one of the discussions that we had last time with the neighbors as well. So we're really excited about that. We don't need a retaining wall up against this anymore. All of this would be natural slope and be done in a way to preserve all that vegetation for screening. Again, I mentioned the walking trail. This could connect sort of to the Burris driveway entrance here and the termination of this road right before it hits the Spear Point Gate. And that could all be connected in. I should mention this Spear Point Gate, that is proposed to stay closed. There's no part of this that's leaving that or turning that into an opening. I know that's something that the neighbors may have concern about as far as sending traffic through there. But again, the walking trail and public access component would be a huge feature of this. Night and noise and light pollution, just think about this. If this is the only field facility over here, the only lights are going to be low-level ground ambient lighting that sort of plays up whatever common space we have out there. And again, that's all up for discussion. So there's no light pollution that would be coming from tall, 80-foot tall field lighting that could be done by right. And then noise, again, all the noise would be contained inside the structure. That's one of the comments we heard about the hockey facility, that it does have a lot of noise factor being an outdoor pavilion. So we felt like that was a massive benefit. And then I know some folks are concerned about traffic, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But 3 fields obviously is going to have less of a traffic impact due to just less peak time, right? If there's 4 games going on versus if there's 3 games going on, you're going to have a little less traffic in terms of its impact to some of these intersections. So I know it's a lot of talking there by me, but here's a blow up again of this area, 120-foot setback. Again, a lot of this, you're talking about 80 to 100 feet of open area that we could program. Probably a couple acres worth of programmable space in here that we would consider sort of up for discussion in terms of how we do that. And so we're really excited about doing that. Again, this was something we'd love to bring back and talk further with the neighbors in terms of our planning commission approval if we're able to be successful tonight.
I have one question. Just out of
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We're not going to take questions yet.
It's just about if you checked other places for.
I'm sorry. We're not going to accept questions tonight. I'm sorry.
Let's move on. So it's slide 7. One of the things that was asked when we had come in previously, we had one view perspective, which is basically the top one here, from sort of the middle part of the property. So it's a little hard to read it to scale, but you see the dome. This is the same site plan that we just witnessed here. You see the black line through that. That's the view perspective. So the one in the middle is coming from a little different angle, and the one from this side is coming from a different angle. What we did on this view perspective is leave the previously designed dome structure so you could see sort of how intrusive that was compared to the 120 feet setback that we have now. And I know it's a little bit faint, but you can see the very top line. There's a view that goes up to the top of that dome. We've reduced this substantially. From every different view angle that you take, they're all about the same. The really only difference between those is sort of their view perspective. There's a little bit of a ridge line when you look at it from the left-hand side and straight on. And so all of this vegetation, again, whether that's existing vegetation or it's new vegetation that's coming in, we can supplement that and fully screen that. I'm confident. Now you're talking about a 20 to 30 foot height in there, which most of the trees along that are a lot taller than that already. And we would look to supplement that and really help neighbors screen any visual. And again, now you're not dealing with 80 feet tall. Just for perspective, if the top of the dome is 75 feet at the highest point, you're talking about lights that sit up in here and are a lot closer than the top of the dome would be to any fields. So the likelihood of being able to screen field lighting, again, under that 4-field plan would be minimal. Just last slide, and there's a lot here, and I'm sorry to do this, but I do want to read through the findings of fact, which, as we understand it, is what the BZA should be looking at to confirm that we've done our job in terms of whether this warrants a variance. So I'll read this. You guys can read along. The conditional use is so designed, this is finding of fact number 1. The conditional use is so designed, located, and proposed to be operated that the public health, safety, and welfare will be protected. And so our response to that is that the new dome facility will be located over 120 feet from the nearest residential property line and will be fully enclosed such that all light and sound from normal operations will be contained inside the structure. The structure is located on the site such that all drainage from the roof and fields will be directed away from residential properties. All drainage designs will be approved by engineering staff, and independent traffic impact study recommendations will be agreed to at the time of formal planning commission site plan approval, which I know that's been a question that's come up. That would be the next phase in the process should we be successful here tonight with this application. Next point, finding of fact, the conditional use will not adversely affect other property in the area in which it is located. Our response is the existing and proposed vegetation will be preserved and installed in order to effectively screen the new structure from view of residential properties. Setback commitment of over 120 feet will drastically reduce the visibility of the structure. Public trails and open space amenity commitments will arguably serve to enhance property values rather than detract from them, as will the additional landscape buffering and retention of existing vegetative buffers, particularly in light of comparison to the 4-field plan. The emergency access barrier gate at Spear Point Drive will remain closed to public. The conditional use, this is number 3, the conditional use conforms to all applicable provisions of this ordinance for the district in which it's located. Our response is that the variance for conditional use as an accessory structure to a government facility conforms to all applicable provisions of the ordinance. The proposed project meets all other zoning code conditions except for height. Lastly, the conditional use in the specific location proposed is consistent with the spirit and the intent of this ordinance and the land use and transportation plan. Our response, the land use plan lists the property area as parkland, which is consistent with the request. As part of the final site plan application, the applicant commits to working with the city on development of a traffic impact assessment to outline any necessary traffic improvements to the surrounding streets. So that's the last slide. I'm going to go back just for reference. That's up, and folks can see that. So just real quick to summarize.
Did you indicate the parking spaces allowed in this view?
Sorry, no questions at this point.
You said about the parking spaces, that's all that is right, that one spot. That's what he wants to verify. That's it.
I'm happy to try to address that. I don't mind.
Go ahead.
In real time answer. Ma'am, could you mind repeating your question? I'm sorry.
It was his. About
Okay.
the parking spots.
Yes,
How
ma'am.
many?
Did you indicate where the parking
Yeah, there's actually 3 different zones of parking. There's 2 proposed new ones, which is one here and one here. And again, these would all be done by right as part of the Planning Commission approval. That's not part of what we're asking for today. But parking for the overall development would be served by these lots as well as supplemental overflow parking during off-peak time from school parking lots.
Okay.
Is that fair?
I'm sorry, let me repeat again, though, before we have any more questions. This is to talk about the height of the dome. That's all. It's not about traffic. It's not about parking. It's not about the horse barn. I know there are a lot of important issues that probably need to be discussed. But tonight, and at the Board of Zoning and Appeals, all we're doing is talking about and deciding about the height of the dome. If the height of the dome gets approved tonight, it is likely that the applicant will then go to the Planning Commission and have to go through the entirety of this plan, including traffic and parking and all of the other things that are involved. And the Planning Commission would then have to approve that, and there would be public hearings for those that could include those items. So if you can, if we turn it down, it is likely that it will not go to the Planning Commission, at least not in this state, not in this particular drawing, not in this particular area. So please keep that in mind, and that's why I'm asking you to keep the questions specific to what we're doing here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be brief in finishing my remarks here. So I know sort of in trying to anticipate maybe some questions that we've gotten along the way from both neighbors and aldermen and some other folks. Questions about alternate locations. So we did look at alternate locations sort of in this area for the dome, right, being maybe less impactful. The important thing to remember about those, there's reasons why we chose to locate it here, particularly, in comparison to sort of right next to the hockey pavilion. Those parking lots would be really underserved in terms of, or these facilities would be underserved with parking lots here. So there's a lot of advantage to having a separate lot and separate location. There's also some things related to this. The city received a grant to put some restrooms in here, and that property line sort of comes through here. So anything that disrupts that parcel with a tall structure or a large structure in there would be something that would have to go back to the state, and it could cause some challenges in terms of its location. But the most important thing to remember, aside from those reasons, is if we located the dome here, more than likely what would happen is, again, the 2 fields flip back on their side, and the encroachment would be significant in terms of vegetation, lighting, and potential for noise. So I think that's an important distinction that I want to make sure that we understand. We did look at alternate locations, and that was a consideration, but this is the plan that we came up with. All other scenarios in terms of size, that was another question that we had. Why does it have to be this tall? Generally, you're looking at a large field, whether it's a soccer field, lacrosse field, football field. These dome structures, we asked specifically whether we could find one that had an average height of 35 feet. It's just not there. It's just not there. For this size of facility, you're talking about something that's more like a gymnasium size type of facility. And truthfully, that's just not in keeping with some of the other needs that you'll hear. So with that, I'll just mention traffic study again. I know a lot of folks are here about that and have concerns about traffic. We understand. We share that. I'm a Hendersonville resident myself. I drive. I am traffic. You're traffic. I'm traffic. I care about it. The city has commissioned an independent third-party consultant. It's not us. It's not even anybody that we have any ties to. They are undergoing the traffic study. A lot of it is based on what plan gets.
I thought this was just to the height of the building.
It is, and I'm trying to be preemptive in saying I know there's folks that are concerned about that, and I'm.
That questions were preemptive.
So. Again, I'm trying to address that is something we care about, we're going to look at, and we're committing to complying with all the...
Cut everybody else off that had non-height questions. I think it's fair to have that all the way around.
Thank you. I'll deal with it. Appreciate it.
Safety and access and mobility. I mentioned the Spear Point Drive is going to remain closed. That's something to make sure it's noted. And then lastly, you mentioned the horse barn. I do believe the mayor has emailed the board and planning. Okay, if that does come up, we would really appreciate that being read into record, if that's something that your group would be okay with doing. We understand that there's a commitment by the city in order to revisit that issue. And again, we don't want that tied to the club because the city has a plan for that. That's outside of what we're trying to propose, if that's fair. So, and
We need to eliminate him to the parent of the dome. He keeps drifting off the other thing.
I understand.
He warned him. Now he's got to stop.
I'll sit down, okay? I'm talking to you, sir.
me?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, sir.
You keep talking about everything that we're supposed to be talking about. Forget about the traffic, the horse barn.
That's
The dome
perfectly
is all
fair.
we're here for,
That's
the
perfectly
variance,
fair.
okay?
I would just ask that the other folks that are here to talk about that get the same treatment.
Do you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. And so again, related to height and related to the use and why it's important for this facility, we have some other folks here that are willing to speak for Tennessee United. We know there's folks that are in opposition. We thought it'd be important for you to hear from folks that are in favor. And again, most of the comments are going to be related to why we need an indoor structure and why we need something of this size. So with that, I'll stop my comments. I would like to potentially reserve 5 minutes on the back, if that's possible, to address any other comments. I'll be quiet. But if you'd like me to come back up and address any other comments or statements that I didn't cover, I'm happy to do that. Thank you.
Can we clarify what the height difference between this dome and the, can we clarify what the height difference between this dome and the existing soccer?
Yes. Would you do that, please?
I believe, I had this in my notes the last time, it may be on the application.
Yeah, I can address that.
Thank you, Timothy.
The existing hockey facility, the overall height, the height at the very top of that facility is 60 feet. It got it was allowed to go over the 35-foot average height to 40 feet. So the conditional use permit it got was for 40 feet with a 60-foot overall height to the top of that hockey structure. This facility asking for 47.5 feet average building height, overall height at the top of the dome is 75 feet.
So, okay.
That's very helpful. Thank you for providing that. I haven't heard anything about the terrain height difference because I walked it this morning and it was about a 40-foot decline from an average point to the top of the dome. The top of the.
I'd like to hold the question, please. My diagram here shows that the total height is 75 foot on the dome versus 40 or 60 on the skating. So it's an additional 15 feet higher at the highest point. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
You are correct on that.
Okay.
Just to answer the gentleman's question, so the dome does actually sit down in relationship to a lot of the neighboring properties. And part of that is because its relationship to the horse barn, which actually sits relatively low, a little closer to the creek than some of the topographic conditions at the top of the property. So if I go back, I'll point her back out. This part of the property actually is on a little bit of a ridge, so this is a high point. Under this scenario, in this area, this would all be cut back. And back to the previous plan, that was one of the things that was noted. This was all going to be cut back, and this field at least was at the same elevation of the dome or of the horse barn structure. And so all of this was under a retaining wall, which this sat lower than this property here. But again, you're talking about a lot of disturbance, and so any fields would likely have the same effect. Any soccer fields would likely have to do the same thing as far as cutting into the slope. So I don't know if that answers the question or not.
It's deceptive.
What's the interior?
Thank you.
How about we just go to the, yeah.
We're making decisions based on false information. I walked it this morning.
We got you. We got you.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm going to go by what we've been presented here. Are you signed up to talk?
I'm happy to. I didn't see a sign-up sheet.
be happy to add your name to it if you'd like to. It's right here, and you could come up and sign up if you'd like.
I would be happy to if he's willing to.
If you'd like to come up and sign up, that would be great. All right. While he's coming up, I have been asked to share with you the two of the emails we got that are considered to be part of the public hearing. This letter is in support of the plan for the turf renovations, both indoor and outdoor, that have been presented by Tennessee United for the development of the park space at Volunteer Park. As this space has already been designated for athletic fields and RFP, won by Tennessee United, the plan they have put together is a great use for the space and will allow usage for our entire Hendersonville community. In addition to alleviating congestion at other parks, it will allow for year-round training for teams and draw other communities to Hendersonville for games and tournaments, a positive economic impact. Currently, our dollars are spent out of county during summertime when parks remove the goals so no one can play, and wintertime when parks close the fields and when fields are too wet to play and teams rent facilities in Murfreesboro, Nashville, and so on. The capacity to keep these spent dollars in our city is invaluable. Additionally, Tennessee United is a top-notch contributing organization to our community, and this plan is well thought out, respectful of the community and neighborhood, and will continue to back the community in years to come. By approving this plan, when presented with the opportunity, you will be doing the right thing. Respectfully, Amy Murphy. The second email is from Art McCoy, 1015 Crossbow Drive. I found out Tennessee United Soccer Coalition is coming before the board to ask for a variance on how high a building be built. It appears this building is proposed to be built where the present police horse barn is located. Do not our tax money build this building? Now they are asking the city to give this property to them and then our tax money to build another. That is wrong. Also, this is a residential area. Just imagine what it does to our property values. Additionally, traffic on already overall used streets. If people on the Board of Aldermen and Mayor want something of this nature, then build it in their backyard. We don't want such an eyesore in our backyard. We need the additional noise and traffic. Those were two that we were requested to read. Now we'll go back to the speaker.
Quick comments, and then I'll leave them.
Well, I'd like to have go in the order in which I have them here. So the first person would be Tom Sears.
Go to the order.
That's what I'm doing. Tom Sears. Todd Sears. I'm sorry.
That's okay, Mr. Chairman.
You might want to sit down because I've got you at the end, and so you're
Mr. Chairman, just a minute, please.
I'm asking the person behind you,
I understand,
who just signed up, to get out of the way. You're blocking the view of other people. I'll call on you when your name comes up, and it will be last because when you signed up. Okay? Thank you, Todd. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Todd Sears. I live at 125 Arrowhead Drive. For context, my property backs up to Volunteer Park, just to the left of the proposed 75-foot dome. My wife and I have lived in Hendersonville for the past 22 years and have resided at our current residence for the past 10 years. This is not a debate on whether or not Tennessee United needs an indoor facility or more playing fields. Let me repeat. We are not here tonight in front of BZA to ask BZA to approve or deny an indoor facility for Tennessee United. We are here to determine a height variance increase for a park that's in an established residential neighborhood and would set a precedent for other parks in the city and surrounding communities. We are asking BZA to deny the request for the height variance. End of the day, nothing changes with respect to the height of the dome, whether it's a 3-field plan or 4-field plan, or even the 2015 plan, which had no dome. What we heard tonight, it's about height. It's not about anything else. Those conversations are for later. This is the same issue that persisted in June and in July. Simply put, a 75-foot dome does not fit in our neighborhood. The homeowners whose properties back up to Volunteer Park do not want the dome. Property owners who live on Arrowhead, Spear Point, Apache, Flint, Crosspoe, along Stop 30 and Drake Creeks Road, and reaching into the Raintree subdivision do not want the dome. Now, Mr. Andrew mentioned how do we get here? And I summarized my comments with just a few bullet points here to kind of back up what he was saying. Several of us who live along Arrowhead and Spear Point got a notice in the mail from the city because we're within the 250-foot of the structure. We met with Tennessee United at my house sometime in June, mid to late June. It was a good 2-hour meeting. But coming out of that meeting, it was Tennessee United, it was about a dozen neighbors, and it was our 2 aldermen. Coming out of that meeting, we decided to form a steering committee of about 6 of us to continue to work with Tennessee United. The steering committee met on July 11th. We actually met the night of July 10th, and on July 11th, we decided to send an email off to Tennessee United. Our conversations in the steering committee, the focus group of the neighborhood and what we wanted to see going back there, we could not get past the dome. All of our conversations came back to the dome. So on July 11th, I sent an email off to Mr. Golden with Tennessee United, and he called me a day or two later. And he wanted to know why we wanted the dome off the table. I explained that there are too many issues with having such a large structure in our backyards, and we needed to move past the dome. We feel the dome does not fit with the other buildings in the area. The dome is another eyesore for the community that we have to live with. The community has to live with 24/7. 6 months out of the year, there are little to no leaves on the trees. Line of sight. And that was one of the items that BZA asked us to come back with. Line of sight. We have a thinning tree line, and the trees are falling due to the age and the winds and the storms. Yes, it's thick up by where the dome is. But look at the tree line as you come from Drake's Creek coming eastward. The trees are thinner. And that's just a telltale sign of what's going to happen in our future. Again, line of sight. The dome would stand as tall as the trees that bordered the park. Line of sight. The dome would cover more than an acre of land, impacting natural absorption of water, impervious surface. Another point that BZA asked us to come back with. And many other overarching issues within the park that need attention, such as noise and light pollution, traffic, water runoff, decrease of property values, in and out concerns for the new fire department, concerns over the environment and the adjoining creek, and the removal of the police presence in the park. No matter how you try to hide the dome behind evergreen trees that keep their leaves year-round, plant new trees that would grow 20-plus feet tall, planting trees that would grow tall over 20 years, surround the dome with walking trails or benches, etc. The dome does not fit with the spirit of the community. This brings us to today. For the decision in front of BZA, it does not matter whether there's a 3 or 4 field proposal. Both proposals include a 75-foot dome in a park, in a neighborhood that the surrounding community of 160 plus homes do not want. Land is being given to a special interest group to develop at their leisure for their members. The general population of Hendersonville will see very little use of the dome, nor the turf fields, as Tennessee United will be controlling the schedule of the facilities. What happens when the next special interest group comes to the city and says, I want land? Let me leave you with this. The Arrowhead community and area residents are getting squeezed with the proposals of the Stop 30 development and the volunteer park development. The city needs to work with the community leaders in our residential neighborhoods to find an agreeable medium on how we define progress. I ask that you deny the height variance. Let's return to planning. Begin again with the community leaders and the city working together for the future of Volunteer Park. Everything and anything is changeable. Look back at the 2015 plan. There was no mention of a fire department. Instead, it was a lacrosse field.
I'm sorry, Ken.
I'm finished. Taking a 5-minute speech and whittling it down is very hard to do. Thank you for your time.
Julie McClendon? Is she here?
She's here.
Oh, hello. Sorry.
Hello.
Sorry.
My name is Julie McClendon. I live on Spear Point Drive, and I do have a question of the board members, if I can ask the BZA board members. Do any of you live within a 1-mile radius of the proposed dome?
I'm sorry, that's just not an appropriate question.
It's not?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you.
We're not
Nope,
here to
that's
answer
cool.
questions
That's
right
fine.
now.
Thank you for your participation. I just wanted to understand if your property values would be impacted by the imposing dome that would be built if this 75-foot variance is granted. This audacious dream of an idea and self-indulgent project has become the nightmare of our community. We will keep our comments aligned with the height variance, but please understand it's a very personal issue to those who live in the affected area. I'm speaking for them, the neighbors who were unaware this project was even proposed, but were nonetheless appalled at the mere mention of the idea. The original RFP that was posted on December 13th, 2022 stated, quote, that the city desires to enhance the recreational amenities for the residents of the city. However, using the data that was provided by Tennessee United Soccer Club, this proposal will only serve 0.86% of the residents of the city of Hendersonville as actual participants. A 75-foot tall, 100,000-plus square foot dome is not worth this minuscule payoff for the small percentage of residents who will actually be utilizing this proposed dome on a regular basis. This special interest group does not serve the over 62,000 residents of Hendersonville. It serves less than 1%. And yet, we are being bullied into paying the price for this privilege. Make no mistake, our property values will take a hit that will never recover if you say yes to the 75-foot height variance request. No one wants to look at this monstrosity day after day. It does not fit with any residential neighborhood, mine or yours. The Horizon Building System Company has been hired to plan this specific dome structure. The proposed dome in Volunteer Park is larger than 94% of the completed projects on their website. I checked them all. As you study these projects, you will find these domes have been used for various purposes. But one thing they all have in common, they are not positioned in the middle of a residential area. It is obvious when you see the massive size of this structure that they do not belong there. This is a rendering that was done to scale. I'll put it up front. This is when it was proposed to the original site, which we just found out it had changed about 3 days ago. I'm going to put it up front so everybody can see it. This is the horse barn, and this is what it would pretty much look like. I'm going to put it up front.
Can we see it, Julie?
Wow.
I can be in a white that around. Okay, settle. It is obvious when you see this picture that the sensible vote is no to the 75-foot variance request. I want to leave you with just a few visuals that might help you with the ability to discern the scope of this project. The size of this dome would allow the building to encompass nearly 4 full-size Goodyear blimps, all in there, with considerable room to spare. On a more local scale, the Kroger on East Main Street, I think we would all agree this is a large grocery store. Indeed, lots of room from one end to the other, especially when you forget the milk at the checkout. This proposed dome is slightly larger than that Kroger. Imagine placing that specific building directly in the middle of your residential area, and then imagine it 7.5 stories tall. That is essentially what you're asking of this community. So I ask that you please vote no on the 75-foot height variance request. It would forever be a detrimental eyesore to the landscape of this community. And I thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Rusty McClendon.
I have some handouts for you. Do have a thumb drive if they want to show them to everybody. You know, there's a lot of passion in the room today and a lot of emotion. There's a great sales pitch on behalf of Andrew for the dome, but I'm here to...
Could you turn the microphone on?
My bad.
Thank you.
I usually talk loud enough, I don't need one. I just ask that you put your passions and emotions aside, you as board members, and let's just look at the height of the dome and discuss the height of the dome and how those numbers came about. I don't know if I've got the thumb drive or not, but it's fine. You have the visual in front of you. On Exhibit A in the staff report from the original request, it says that I was looking at it, and of course, obviously, it's not to scale, but I was trying to figure out how they came up with, or how you guys came up with the average. So I took all those numbers, added them up, and then divided them. Well, that's not the way that it's done. So I found out that there were some assumptions made. Well, we all know what assuming does to you and me. So I'm more of an analytical guy that wants the real numbers. So I started looking at the actual height of the hockey rink, and when that in Exhibit B, you can see I drew it on graph paper, and the midpoint would be the same as the average. So if you average the outside wall and the total height, it's 40. Well, that's the middle of that slope. When you do the same thing with the curvature and look at the midpoint or the median of that curve, of that slope, it's more like 63. So the request is actually for a variance of 63 feet if you would look at the median or the midpoint, which is what we should be looking at as opposed to the average and using assumptions. I would rather use real numbers than fictional numbers. So, and that's just on the transverse side. If you turn to Exhibit C, when you look at the longitudinal, I mean, the median is more like 74 feet. So that got me to thinking, well, how much of this actual building structure, enclosed structure, is going to be above the current 35-foot ordinance? So if you turn to Exhibit D, more graph paper, I drew it all out, and it's going to be over 1.5 acres of enclosed area that's above the 35-foot variance. That's a lot of space. My lot, I live on Spear Point. Sorry, I didn't say that. Rusty McClendon, Spear Point Drive, is 1.3 acres. You can fit my whole lot in the dome and still have 35 feet above it. The Publix on Main Street, you can fit that in the bubble. The All Air Extreme, the old Kroger, you can fit that in the bubble. Just in the area that's above 35 feet. The Regal Cinemas over here at Indian Lake, you can fit that in the bubble. I just want to remind you that you're voting to allow or disallow 62 or 63 feet, depending on how it's drawn, variance in real numbers. You must consider the curved slope of the roof and get rid of the assumptions and make your decision on real numbers, please. And that's all.
Thank you. Kim Hoffman.
Good evening. My name is Kim. I live at 1205 Spear Point Drive, which my backyard would have the proposed dome in it. I did consult with an arborist to inquire about the impact that digging 15 feet, and the initial proposal from Tennessee United did indicate that they would need to dig down 15 feet to support such a tall structure, 75-foot structure. I know that has since been revised as of Friday, but I did consult with an arborist to inquire about the impact that digging 15 feet into the ground would have on the root structure of the really mature trees that we've spoken about this evening. And she did report that the roots would very likely be impacted by that. And also, I know, again, the plan has changed for the single dome scenario. However, knowing the rock and the ground that we have in our backyards, there would need to be blasting, et cetera, that would impact the root structure of these very mature trees. Again, that would impact our sight lines at least 6 months of the year when there's not foliage. Also, I pulled some quotes. I know we've heard about the 2015 plans, and I think there was something that Robin mentioned Friday on the Zoom call from Tennessee United about 2016 plans. However, I wanted to pull some quotes from 2022, which is pretty recent in the grand scheme of things, directly from the Hendersonville zoning ordinance revision under Chapter 12, the building design standards. Number 12. 2.1 natural character states, and I quote, Hendersonville's natural character should be preserved and enhanced with new development. Especially important are retaining mature trees and vegetation, maintaining topography, preserving important views to the lakes and other natural features, and ensuring that new buildings sit with a generously landscaped setting. The second one is 12.1, 2.2, compatibility states, new buildings should be compatible with their neighbors, assuming that the neighboring structures are a credit to the community. That does not imply uniformity or architectural style, rather a sympathetic response to height, scale, materials, color, site location, and other aspects of nearby structures. The current height variance limit has been in place to preserve the quality of our residential neighborhoods. The construction of Burris Elementary, Knox Doss, the Mounted Police Barn, and most recently the Fire Hall have all adhered to the current height ordinance. As a parent and educator in the community, I'm an advocate for children's sports. However, this is not a suitable location for such an enormous structure. This location is already extremely congested with traffic for 2 schools, a soon-to-be fire hall, athletic fields, and the police barn. So obviously, I implore you to vote no to the height variance request. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandra Hale. Sandra Hale.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Hale. I live at 127 Arrowhead Drive, and my property backs directly up to the facility that's proposed. So we know today we're here to discuss height variance. Arrowhead subdivision is ER zoning, which, as you all are aware, stands for estate residential. The maximum building height is 35 feet. Most 2-story homes are approximately 20 to 30 feet high. Currently in our subdivision, I'm only aware of 1- and 2-story homes. I checked and read, and the purpose of the Hendersonville zoning ordinance, it states sustaining property values and to protect the investments which have been made in homes and businesses. In keeping with the spirit and intent of the ER zoning, you cannot allow a 75-foot high dome to be built. This is equivalent to more than 2-story houses or more stacked on top of one another. This is not consistent with the residential development in our neighborhood. For most people, our homes are the single highest investment that we have. And I am a taxpayer. I pay my property taxes, and I have rights to a safe and peaceful neighborhood. At the end of the day, the city of Hendersonville owns this property. It is the city's responsibility to enforce the zoning laws that were written to protect its citizens and homeowners. So I'm asking that you say no to this height variance request. Thank you.
Renee Brewer. What's the name? Renee Brewer. Is there Renee Brewer? Okay, I'll go to the next one. I can't read this. Pam Frazier.
May I just say from here, or do I need to go over to the microphone?
If you speak real loud, you can.
I will speak real loud. My children will tell you I have lungs. I agree with everything that has been said. I see no need to go any further other than that I agree with the property zoning as it is. It's appropriate, and I think it should stay as it is.
Thank you. Ginger Betlifson.
Ginger Detlefson, 1286 Goshen Town Road. I am president of the Hendersonville Citizens Police Academy. Could I ask that all the blue shirts please stand up? This is our organization and our supporters. Thank you. I am here representing these blue shirts. Our mission is to do whatever we can to help our Hendersonville Police Department, who protects us, all of us, every day. Currently, our focus is the mounted patrol horse barn that we have a vested interest in. We hope to get that barn built in the perfect spot where it stands. If you, the Board of Zoning and Appeals, grant the Tennessee United Soccer Club the height variance they are asking for, then they will in turn have leverage to go to the Planning Commission with their proposal, telling them the zoning board approves. That plan includes the Tennessee United Soccer Club taking over our horse barn for their use. That would be devastating for so many reasons. Our mounted officers, our dear horses, Rango, Sunny, Dusty, Bo, and Peacekeeper, would be uprooted and lose the home they love and are accustomed to. We worked for several years to get this project completed, and I doubt any of you realize what our mounted officers have done to make that a perfect home for those horses and all of the training that takes place there. Our two schools, Burris and Knox-Doss, would lose the comfort of having police protection right across the street. This is huge for them, the students, and their parents. There are many more reasons why this is not a good location. If the city planned on athletic fields there in 2016, then why did they give the land for the horse barn to be built on that property in 2019? That is just wrong, and they should not renege on their agreement. I am asking the board to vote no on the height variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan Whalen. Jonathan Whalen.
Jonathan Whalen, 105 Saratoga Boulevard. I just want to reiterate that we were thrust into this situation because we responded to an RFP process that was put out by the city. And I think that there was a letter that was sent by Mr. Eckenroth regarding the RFP process and how that was put forward. So this was a process that we followed through, and we were put in this situation. So we just responded to a process. So we weren't sure exactly what we were getting into. We are very aware of that now as an organization, and we definitely understand and respect everyone's thoughts and opinions on the situation. I do want to, because there was a comment on the horse barn, I would like to read the letter that the mayor had sent to BZA regarding the horse barn, because we don't have any decisions on that as well either. It says, "Thank you for serving the city of Hendersonville. Even though the status of the horses is not of the criteria for your decision about Volunteer Park, I wanted to let you know that the city is creating a plan for the horses in the barn. This is not meant to advocate for or against the application that you are considering. The original plan created almost 20 years ago for Volunteer Park was athletic facilities. The horse barn and fenced pasture was created when Hendersonville's board decided to move the horses to Volunteer Park, even though the plan for that land never included horses. When the horses were moved, the city of Hendersonville did not own Beatty Farm, now known as Heritage Park. Had the city owned Heritage Park when the horses were moved, I feel confident that our board would have decided to move the horses to Heritage Park, leaving Volunteer Park to become athletic facilities. Seeing an opportunity now, I plan to ask our board to agree that the horses should be moved to Heritage Park. If the TUSC plan moves forward towards fruition, the city will be working with TUSC to move the horses and build a new barn at the expense of TUSC. The move makes sense. Heritage Park is planned as a passive park fitting for horses, has enough pasture for the horses and additional land for other activities, has more storage space with a house, offers a better opportunity for horse-based events. Even if the TUSC plan does not move forward, I will ask the city board to consider Heritage Park for long-term home for the horses, returning Volunteer Park to its original objective. Thank you for the work on the BZA and your attention to the item. Just a couple of things that I just want to address from a club standpoint. We are a community club and a community organization. We've got 1,100 members. 60% of those members have Hendersonville addresses. Another 25% of those live in close proximity to the surrounding areas. Based off of the growth of our organization, we're a 20-year organization. Started with 250 members, and we're up over 1,100 at this point.
Does this have anything to do with the height of the building?
Objection. We listened to many comments that had nothing to do with
they were all yours.
request legally that if we're going to do that, that we play both sides. Because these folks have been kind enough to sit and listen. We've listened to
Okay.
responding to some things that have been said.
We're trying to limit it to the height.
I understand that, but we've heard different things about our organization, and I just want to give everyone a context on who we are.
I'd like to keep it to the height.
Okay.
I've let it slide over a few times. I'm trying to keep it as little of that as possible.
I understand that. And again, we are not, Tennessee United will not control this property. It's a city property. We're in conjunction with the city and the Parks Department. It's no different than Mary's Magical Playground that was built with private funds, as well as the rugby complex. It's city property built with private money. So we will also work with the city in controlling those properties and facilities. So we thank you for your time, and we do appreciate it. We've got lots of families that are looking forward to having the opportunity here. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin Mansley.
Good evening. Robin Maudsley, 103 Chadwick Court. To respect everybody here, my speech has nothing to do with the height of the building. Therefore, I'm not going to talk about anything else that I had already prepared. I currently serve as the president of the board. I have been the president for 2 years. My son was with the club for 8 years, and he is now graduated out. My commitment and dedication not only to Tennessee United, but to the community, to all of our families, is such that I am continuing my role because I want this whole community to thrive. This indoor facility, yeah, it's big. It is big, but it's meant to cover an entire indoor field that is going to do more than just let our kids play soccer. We're going to have someone else speak to some of the facility usage. The height is what it is to cover the space of the field that it has. There has been an intangible amount of money that has been spent outside of Hendersonville, because when our teams need to play and the weather is bad. I'm speaking to the use of the facility. I'm speaking as to why the facility is needed.
Will you please be quiet, or I'm going to ask you to leave? Okay? We need everybody to just settle down. Please finish up. For one thing, I tried to keep it to 2 minutes. Y'all are going longer than that. We're going to be here all night. And let's keep it to the height. I'm sorry. I'm going to be more strict now because we're running. I mean, it's going on forever.
Right. The height is what it is because of the size of the facility. Because it is a regular size soccer field, it has that height. The reason that we are asking for a regular sized soccer field along with that height is so that our community, not just Tennessee United, but the usage of those fields year round can be done. We're currently going to cities like Murfreesboro that has an indoor facility just like this. We're going to Franklin that has an indoor facility, and not staying in Tennessee.
We need to keep it down to the height, please.
I understand.
No, I don't know if you do.
I do.
Please, everybody.
I do understand.
We need to get it back to the height.
Right. And the
finish.
height is what it is because of the size of the field, so that we are able to not only host games, but that other community events, such as there's been movies and things like that the city has hosted, that would be able to be done inside this facility. There are other organizations, not just Tennessee United, that would be using the facility, and because of that, the size of the field needs to be what it is.
I think we need to cut it short now.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lindsay Walther. We are going to run out of time, so
Okay.
please, I'm going to have to be more strict on the height.
Yes, sir.
The height.
Okay. I'm going to introduce myself, and that has nothing to do with the height of the dome. But it's my name, so it's important. Okay, just kidding. I just thought I'd be funny. All right, my name is Lindsay Walters. I am the TUSC Club Treasurer. I live at 207 Buchanan Circle here in Hendersonville. I have served as a volunteer in this position as Club Treasurer for almost 3 years. I'm here to give my support for the TUSC facility project at Arrowhead as both a board member and the treasurer for this club. As the club treasurer, I work with families to make sure that soccer in this area stays financially accessible. We provide quality development, promotion, education, and advancement for the sport of competitive soccer among the young players of this community, regardless of their ability to pay fees. Now, before y'all freak out, I just want to verify with you that TUSC is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that undergoes a voluntary financial audit each year.
Lindsay, I'm sorry.
The height, I know.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that we have. I mean.
All right, settle down, please.
Y'all, sorry. Can I finish my sentence? Can I please just finish my sentence about our financial transparency policy? I wanted to be financially transparent so that you know that when we talk about this facility, Tennessee United is uniquely positioned to provide something like this for our community.
Lindsay, I'm sorry. We have to be through now.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you
We'll
so
now
much.
call the next.
Nope. Thank you so much. I would like to thank the members of the BZA for their consideration of this matter.
Kelly Evans.
Okay, my name
Please
is...
be quiet. Thank you.
My name is Kelly Evans. I live at 1522 Anderson Road. Pass by this area daily. I'm going to be honest. You guys have me really nervous. So I'm the director for Tennessee United Stars soccer program. I'm going to give you a very brief synopsis of our program and then go into how. I listened a lot, and you need to understand our program to understand how the height will help.
Okay, please.
I will get to that. If you will give me a few minutes.
I'm sorry.
Or not minutes, seconds.
Please just talk about the height.
We serve free soccer programs to individuals with disabilities.
Hey.
You people, I'm telling you, this is unreal. We started with 10 participants with special needs. And over the years, since United started working with us, we are up to 50 participants. This is a fully inclusive program, and we pull in United Club teams and your local high school soccer teams to come volunteer to be buddies with these participants. It is an amazing program, but
I'm sorry, we're going to have to.
Part of our problem.
We're going to have to cut it short.
I'm getting to the height. Part of the problem that we are running into is size.
All right, everybody, please.
Size.
I think you need to be through now. I'm sorry. Thank you.
I'm getting to the size.
Well, then
you're going to cut me off before that?
Please do it right now. We don't have time to get to it. We need to just do it right now.
I'm done. I couldn't hear you. There were too many people talking.
Get to the height, and then we have to move on.
Because we have so many participants and so many buddies, we can no longer go inside to the Merrill High Gym, which is what we have been doing. Because our athletes have sensory needs, the acoustics in the gym is too much for them. There's too many buddies. There's too many participants. We have to cancel the events now.
Okay.
And I have looked for multiple different solutions to our problem. This would be the solution. Moving that many people into a small gym does not work. If we have a large field that is enclosed, which will help with safety issues, we have players who elope, which means they run away. This will help keep everyone contained in that space. The turf and the structure will help absorb that sound so we don't have the noise issues that we're having, which create sensory problems for a lot of our players.
I'm sorry, that's all we have time for. Thank you. Jim?
May I?
Yes.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have got to control our temper. We've got to control our speech. And when the chairman says 2 minutes, he means 2 minutes. He also said 3 times, I sat here and counted them 3 times, stick to the dome, the variance of the dome. Now, if you can't do that, kind of leave right now and let somebody else get up here and talk. We're going to be here till midnight the way y'all are acting right now. Hit the point about the dome, the variance, 2 minutes, sit down. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Chairman.
Ashley Maxwell, please. Ashley Maxwell.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ashley Maxwell. This is my son, Xander. He is one of those special needs students that Kelly was talking to you about. He has a chromosomal disorder that leaves him with low energy. This program, this facility, I can't tell you what it does for us as a special needs community, how it's brought us together. When we're outside Merrill Hyde, several times, balls get kicked out into the road, causing a traffic hazard. If you could see how some of these kids are able to kick, you would understand why this height is needed. Because it's a dome. Sports, football domes, they are all having to be that height. I appreciate that you're concerned for your homes.
Ma'am, could you face us and speak?
However, I'm so sorry. However,
Thank you.
sometimes being a part of a community means being there and doing things to support everyone in your community, not just the ones that look like me and you.
Ray Trotter. Ray Trotter.
Thank you, guys. My name is Ray Trotter. I have the privilege of this being my 18th year to coach at Tennessee United. This is kind of my passion time. I live at 1071 Connie Drive. The reason why the height is important is because we have to have a roof. As a coach, I can't tell you the process that you go through to try to scramble to find an alternative when we get rained out. Scheduling could be even still an issue with just one field, if you could imagine 1,100 people that we serve within our club. So the reason for the height is that we can have a full field covered, and that is what it takes to cover a full field of soccer. And it allows us to have that extra space to then go when we have inclement weather and for other special programs that we offer at Tennessee United. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jeff Blazok. Jeff Blazok, I may not be pronouncing it right. on Macy Drive. Okay. Lobe Smith. Toby?
Yes. Hello? Is it working? Okay. Hello, my name is Kobe Smith. I currently reside at 1020 Avery Trace Circle. I have lived in Hendersonville my entire life, and I have recently graduated Beach High School, so I'm currently 18 years old. And regarding the height, I have already heard a lot of my points issued by people, so really all I could bring up is current comparisons that I have, just instead of numbers, because 75 is kind of something that may be harder to understand. So some examples of what 75 feet would look like near residential areas. Of course, this, as already mentioned, a 7-story building. It also is equivalent to about 1/3 the height of the Statue of Liberty. It is also taller than NASA's Jupiter-C rocket, which is an immense height and not something that should be placed in a backyard, maybe in a more area equipped to non-residential buildings, which is perfectly fine. But as 75 foot tall in the backyards of certain houses would definitely diminish their value, including houses that are like mine that are nearby. I'd like to thank you for letting me speak in front of you today, and all the people that come here for your support. And so I would like you to vote no on this issue.
Thank you. John Brenzy. John Brenzy? No?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Okay, my name is John Brenzy, and I live at 122 Arrowhead Drive in the Arrowhead subdivision. I have lived there for 30 years. And first, I love the area, and that's why I moved to Arrowhead, and that's why I moved to this side of Vietnam Veterans Boulevard, because it was zoned residential, and that was very important for me for the country feel of what I was looking for with a high-pressure job. Part of the proposal is building a 75-foot soccer dome behind the property lines of many people in this community. So high that the Board of Zoning, we've had to come to you guys to discuss why this cannot be approved. I'm trying to understand why a group of folks can't come together, work through this issue, instead of being mad at each other. Let's work through with Tennessee United to find something alternative. I'm trying to I'm appealing to the board. I'm appealing to every one of you. How would you like this in your backyard?
Right.
How would you like this? How would you like this affecting your property values? How would you like this affecting your line of sight views? Even the people. We want to work with Tennessee United. Let's talk character. Let's all have the character to do what we have to do to make the right decision. So we're asking the board to say no, and we think everyone should be a part of that. Let's talk quality. What Tennessee United, they want this, but at our quality. Please face the board up front, please. At our decrease of property values, at our decrease of line of sight views, that is a beautiful community. The other thing is, let's talk unity.
Let's talk about the height. Isn't that what we're doing?
Wait, yes, I am.
Okay.
I've already said the 75.
Directing our comments to the board.
Everybody else has to say that.
I don't appreciate that because I've been talking nothing.
Please.
Up front. Yeah. All I'm saying is that we need to work together to unite, to find an alternative plan so that everyone can win. And all I'm saying is that let's work with our city leaders Let's work with Tennessee United. Let's work with the residents of whatever area that this will be built in. We're not saying don't build it. It just doesn't fit for all of the various reasons that our neighbors have said. That height does not fit in our neighborhood.
Okay.
One last thing. I think if you asked everyone in this room to put a building 75 feet high, and I'm talking height, in their backyards, they'd all say no.
April Perry. April Perry. Okay. Something Gabers.
119.
Oh, she's coming.
Okay.
She's coming.
Is it on? Hi. Alex Gavers. I live at 119 Doral Lane. I'm just, the height that most people, the reason why they don't want it is because of the impact to the neighborhood. And I am a realtor. I'm not certified to say what something is going to do to a value of a property. The only thing I can really say is that on listings for houses, buyers and buyer's agent to verify all pertinent information. This is a phrase every real estate agent puts in the private remarks section of their listing. It makes it their responsibility to make sure zoning, square footage, schools, and conditions are as they expect before purchasing. So all the homeowners should have known and been made aware that they had no claim, easement, or right to the property that lies next to their subdivision or property. They have no say in its use. It is not a part of their property, and they don't have a right to a specific view.
Can we talk about the height, or you?
Right, exactly, the height. They don't, how does the height, and that's it. I think that is all I have. Thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you. Kelly Harrison. Kelly Harrison.
Hi, my name is Kelly Harrison, and I live at 204 Ashington, which is less than a mile from the proposed site. I'm 5'6", so that's my height. The height of that building, I don't think will be any more obtrusive to the people in that general area than a 60-foot inline soccer facility that has open sides. If you guys are arguing height of the bubble, if we don't have a bubble and we go to the next plan, the non-light sensitive 80-foot light poles that will blare into your backyards seem like a much more obtrusive view. My son played for Tennessee United, has used buildings that high, and is now playing for Nashville SC. This is incredibly important to all of the people in the city of Hendersonville. I understand that the Arrowhead community is worried about the height. Tennessee United has vowed to put in additional trees to block that height and to make it non-obtrusive. You don't get to control what the city has already zoned that land for just because you don't like it.
Hey, settle down. Let her talk, please.
That property was zoned in 2015 for sports fields.
No.
Correct. The 75 feet is large, but it's not so large that it's going to take away from your everyday life, while it will add to so many everyday lives.
Thank you. Looks like Teresa on Dale Avenue. Is it Sloan?
Here it is.
I'm going to be really quick and just hope people can be respectful. I am a parent. I just want to stress the fact that the size of the dome is what it needs to be. I know a lot of people have said that. And I just want to say quickly that we are having to drive to big events in other cities. And they're making so much money in those cities, and we're doing this for our kids. Again, I'm not saying I like the height. I'm just saying that is what the height is required to be in order for this to happen. And I just feel like our kids, whether it's United kids or other kids that want to use a facility, we're taking away from them what almost every other community around us has in place. I don't want to drive an hour just for my kids to be able to play soccer in the winter. Thank you.
Andrew Miller.
Wouldn't be an hour late.
My name is Andrew Miller. I've never been to one of these hearings before, and quite frankly, this is pretty disgusting. The behavior of people. I understand.
You got something to say about the height?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. So as Teresa said, it has to be this big or that tall because it needs a full-size field in it. If they were to build something smaller, lower, it would not facilitate the activities that it is being built for, meaning it would not draw those kids in to use the field from the other counties. It would not allow us to use the facility here in Hendersonville, and we would keep going elsewhere. If other proposals which have a lower height are used, it will not be a functional soccer field. Soccer needs a certain amount of height, and that has been built into the proposal. Now, the other thing is this is not specifically a soccer field. It is also being built that high to accommodate other sports, lacrosse, football, things like that, community events. It needs to be big enough that it can be used by the whole community. And that's what the proposal has been. That's what the proposal allows for, is that it will not be limited by, well, we'd like to do this here, but it's not big enough. It is an appropriate size to be used, multi-use, not just Tennessee United, multiple sports, multiple events, and the height accommodates for that.
Thank you. Judy Burt.
Fields, do they have a dome? Any of those fields have a dome?
Please keep it down.
Good evening. My name is Judy Burt, and I live at 149 Bay Drive. As a former school administrator here in Hendersonville, the presence of the officers and all in the neighborhood is very important to schools, as we all know, due to the many school events that have taken place in the last few years. The officers provide security. Thousands of children...
Would you please, excuse me 1 second. Would you please keep your hand down? It's very distracting. Just keep your hand down. It's very distracting. And are you going to discuss the height?
I will say that part of the consideration of this board is public safety. And there are thousands of children in those schools every day of the week. And there's not thousands of children on the soccer field every day of the week. And this organization also controls the schedule, which
okay,
limits,
I'm sorry, we're not talking about height.
Which limits
I'm going
other
to have to cut you
people's
short.
use.
I'm sorry.
I'm finished.
The city controls the schedule, not Tennessee.
Patty Engelhardt.
Good evening. My name is Patty Engelhardt. It's my husband, Jeff. He's on the list after me, so he's here with me. But we live in Islandbrook. We came here. I found out about this whole process on Saturday, scrolling through social media, and found the Facebook page for these folks, and learned about the proposal for this whole monstrosity going in this residential neighborhood. We have children that attend both Burris and Knox-Doss elementaries. The fact that somebody had mentioned people that live within a 250-foot radius were notified of this at the very beginning, I'm really concerned. My children attend these schools within that radius. Why were those families not notified?
I'm sorry, we need to stick with the height for now. We've only got a few more people.
So, in regards to the height, you have zoning requirements put in place for a reason. They are put in place to maintain aesthetics, to maintain the feel of a neighborhood, to maintain the tree lines and all of these things. The skating rink that is currently there does not fit in that neighborhood setting. And if that doesn't fit, there is no way that that is not going to be an absolute awful monstrosity in this neighborhood. I'm sorry. And that is not even, I've heard many people talk about safety, that's why it's a dome, the fact that the sides are open, on the skating rink, that this is even better. No, it's not. That means there's even more white that's going to be just visible to all of these people that live in this neighborhood. And safety-wise, I'm sorry, you're talking about safety of the children that are playing in this arena, which we can be supportive of people of all abilities without taking away from property values of the homeowners surrounding this. And I really hope that people are considering the safety of the children that attend those schools right across the parking lot.
Jeff Englehart. I live with Patty Englehart as usual. She says everything right. But I lived in Central America for 4 years. I am a rabid soccer fan. I still have all my whistles from my referee days. I was hoarse days after games. Believe me, I get it. No doubt Tennessee United is a phenomenal organization. We've got a great builder here. In regards to the height here, my goodness, I drive that road every single day. I know traffic hasn't been addressed yet. It needs to be a major consideration. But in terms of that height, look, you're talking about a field for your children to play. We're talking about the safety of our children at the school every day, and the property values of homeowners that have lived there for decades. Not to mention, when we first got here from San Diego, what a move, man! We were just so out of place. My daughter got to ride Rango. Thank you. Her first day of school, it made everything better for us. There's got to be a way we can all come together. That height, people absolutely not in that area. I get that it needs to be that height. That looks like a killer facility. Can't we find another location that we can all agree on? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Boy, I'm going to ruin this one. Steve Stakovic.
He's left.
He did?
He's left.
Oh. Well, he wanted to speak really
He did, but he had child duties.
He had to take care of his son.
The next one would be Mike Barsovich.
Thank you and good evening. I'll try to be as brief as possible. First of all, thank you for your service. You guys are exemplary night. In my career, I'm an industrial engineer by trade. I've worked on many warehouses. I've used 40-foot clear height extensively. I've built and helped build buildings that are 75-foot tall, top of beam. You can see those things for a distance. There is not I've never seen somebody plant a 60-foot tree. No, I know you can plant trees, they're going to grow eventually. But, oh, by the way, I live 125 Flintshire, and I can guarantee every day that I pass by that hockey rink, I don't look at the traffic, I look at that rink. Day or night, I look at it, right? So I understand it was done. What's done is done. But I asked the board, don't do any more. I will tell you, a 70-foot 5 clear height, you will see that thing for a quarter mile to half mile. I live in 125 Flintshire, so that's Ivy Point, that's further away. I think if I go back up Jones Road, there's a 50-50 one day I'll see it, especially in the fall. So, once again, I agree with the prior speaker. I know you're going to work at Stop 30. Great other place for it, along the road, not many people, but that's for another day. But please, I beg of you, please vote no. Thank you.
you. Eddie Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and BZA board members. I have an interest in this variance petition tonight, for it's located in a ward that Vice Mayor Waters and I represent. I'm also within a mile, my home is within a mile of this facility. First, I want to thank both sides in this issue, the neighbors and Tennessee United Soccer. I have friends on both sides, and I can assure you that both sides love this city. And they have attempted to come up with, at my urging, a mutually agreeable solution. And I sincerely thank them for their diligent effort. I have discussed this issue with both sides. And I have twice visited with neighbors whose property will be affected by the building of this dome. And I have to admit that I would not want such an imposing structure at the back of my property. And I ask you to ask yourself that same question. You're being asked tonight to waive a building height standard for this property that has been in place for many, many years. Building standards, as you're aware, and codes such as height restrictions approved by this city are important to preserve and protect the character and investment of existing property owners and should, in my opinion, only be waived for extraordinary or compelling reasons. The default, in my opinion, should always be to enforce existing codes of the city. This high standard protects existing property owners by not changing the rules in the middle of the game without just cause. In fact, I use this high standard myself when such requests come to BOMA, and have in the majority of cases rejected waiver requests. I also give great weight to citizens' comments in the affected area. Healthy and safe neighborhoods are an important element to a successful city, and city leaders should do all that we can to maintain and promote established neighborhoods. I have received dozens of emails from Arrowhead residents opposed to the height request for the soccer dome. In this case, the neighbors have clearly spoken in opposition to the height variance claiming that it will likely diminish the value of their homes and the tranquility of their neighborhoods. Some may cite the variance the city granted for the indoor inline hockey facility on the land at Volunteer Park as a precedent for the current waiver request, but I respectfully disagree. That waiver that you approved did provide, I believe, extraordinary and compelling reasons for the existing city's inline hockey facility at Veterans Park was repeatedly flooded and had even lost its insurability from flooding. A new location for the inline hockey was needed out of the floodplain, and the Parks Department has very little land out of the floodplain. Also, I don't recall any citizen opposition to that height waiver request, probably because the facility was not in close proximity to a single neighbor affected. As you're aware, the proposed soccer dome variance is 15 feet higher than the variance granted for the inline hockey facility and is considerably closer to Arrowhead residents. In closing, I have said that the long-range park plan for this city-owned land is for recreational fields, and it will be developed sometime in the future for recreational purposes. No one disagrees that our city needs more recreational facilities for our growing youth population. In fact, according to our Parks Department, over 1,500 soccer players utilize our existing overused facilities. It is also clear to me that the city, though, would benefit from an indoor soccer facility, albeit at a better location. I appreciate Tennessee United Soccer for stepping up with the plan and agreeing to fund said plan. But your decision, in my opinion, will hinge on whether, in your measured judgment, an extraordinary and compelling reason exists for this waiver, and also consider how it might adversely affect the existing neighborhoods in close proximity. I think the record is pretty clear on both of these tests. Thank you.
Thank you. I see I missed a name that was written in the margin. I might have missed somebody else. Don Lewis. Sorry, Mr. Lewis.
That's all right. I'm Don Lewis. I live at 105 Arrowhead. I'm going to try to go through this quickly. First, some housekeeping. Gentleman was presenting what he said were original plans for this park. When this park was put up for purchase, or this land was being proposed for purchase by Mayor Fuquay and the Board of Aldermen at that time, I've got a copy of that drawing. It did not have any lit fields on it. It was unlit practice soccer fields and hiking trails. It was supposed to be a natural park for the use of the residents around it. Therefore, the relative height of the dome with respect to the surrounding neighborhood would be deficient, would be detrimental to the value of the houses. The overall elevation, for instance, at Drake's Creek is lower with respect to their surrounding neighborhood. So a higher building in that location would be less obtrusive to the surrounding neighborhood. The existing vegetation that they're talking about preserving is deciduous. So in the fall, all the leaves will fall off. So there'll be 6 months out of the year that there will be no screen. In order to get trees tall enough to hide the building, they'll have to build very large berms, 20, 30-foot tall berms, which are going to have 40, 50, 60 feet bases. There's not going to be room for that. At an earlier meeting, the engineer for Tennessee United stated that the height has no impact on rainfall runoff. But yes, it does. Rain doesn't fall straight down. It falls at an angle. Therefore, the higher the building, the less rain falling at an angle is going to go over it. So more rain is gathered and is sent to the drainage. Their drainage is directly into the creek. No bow retainment pond, no flood retainment pond, and that creek floods every time it rains. So the height of the building will impact the flooding on all of the adjacent properties. It'll channel more water faster into that creek. The state requires a disclosure form for anyone selling their house. On that disclosure form are any noise and light issues that the buyer would have to be aware of. So it will directly lower the value of the property that I purchased 35 years ago before there was even a park there, when it was a farm. Gallatin has given us a good example. They built their sports complex away from everybody. There was no residents around their park.
Okay, let's
the height
keep
of
it to the height.
There, height of buildings there will not impact anyone around them. Anyone moving into it later, developments that come up later, will do so in full knowledge. So I'm asking you to vote no to destroy these existing neighborhoods, long existing neighborhoods, by putting another eyesore in between them. Thank you.
Thank you. Did I miss anybody else? Okay, they will call the public hearing closed, and we'll go about the business of discussing it. Do I have a motion or any discussion from the board?
Did we approve the minutes?
What?
Did we approve the minutes?
Approve the minutes?
Yeah, did we approve the
Yeah. Any discussion from the board?
I have questions for the staff and also questions for the presenter and questions for you.
Okay.
My question for you is...
Turn on your mic.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Can everybody hear me? Okay. My question for you is out of the ordinary, but since we had a community meeting, could we have the community meeting representative I would like to know what transpired from their point of view from these community meetings.
I think they had that opportunity, and I believe a spokesman for them was one of their early speakers. Yeah.
So that was your. So that was Todd's summary then.
I think so.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My question for the staff is, and I already had this question down, but it was brought up a couple times. Can you define, based on the zoning, the way the zoning is now, what the definition of 35 feet means? And this proposal said 47.6 feet. So can you go through that mathematics?
Sure. Yes.
Thank you.
So the definition given in the zoning ordinance is it's basically for average building height. And the way that's calculated is the average between the very top of the structure and the elevation of the structure at the exterior building wall. So in the case of the existing hockey building, the top of that structure was at 60 feet. The exterior building wall, of course it's open-sided, but at the eave, that was 20 feet. So that's how that average was calculated. In the case of a dome, where you don't really have like an exterior building wall, I mean the whole dome, it's like a roof that comes down and touches the ground. So in order to make sure we compare apples to apples, we assumed an exterior building height or building wall of 20 feet, the same as the hockey building. So the average between that 20 feet and the top of the dome structure is 75 feet, which gives you the 47.5 feet.
Thank you. Thank you. So I have a list of questions for the presenter. Probably somebody else has the same questions, but I don't want to
Go ahead.
Okay.
Turn your mic on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. Let's see. I'll just go down top to bottom, no particular order. Okay, so you talked about other locations. It was brought up in the comments a lot. But you're talking other locations specifically about the park area itself. So my question would be, a couple things. Just driving down the road, driving in, out here on Maple, turn left. On both sides of the street, there's a lot of property, and I would assume this area is zoned for what your needs is. So why wouldn't something like that work?
I think that's not a question that's appropriate relating to the height.
Okay.
If you, I can answer that very briefly, just for the gentleman, if that's okay.
No, that's not.
Would that be okay? Just brief. I'll be very brief.
No, I want to respect.
Sure, I do too.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I understand.
It could be in several different locations around the city, but we're talking about this particular park and the height waiver.
Okay, so my next point is our screen went. Can we bring back up the screen?
Do we have that?
Okay, so can you go to the one that shows the heights at the horizontal view?
75.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. That's it. So the top one is your new proposal. That's
the top one, the middle one, and the bottom one all have the current proposal, which is the darker shaded dome. So this is the 125 foot or 120 foot setback off the property line. The lighter shade, which I agree is a little tough to see, but that's this. That was the original proposal. So we're trying to juxtapose the sight line compared to what we initially came.
So the darker is the 120 feet.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, that's the 120-foot committed setback line, which is the same for every view.
So what is talk to me about this 15 feet below level.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to talk through that. So you may recall one of the initial plans that we had was a grading and drainage plan. And again, I don't have that printed, and truthfully, it's a little technical, and I understand not everybody can follow grading contours, but there is a ridge line kind of in this zone here, which actually pitches from here down, goes to the stream, and from this side actually goes towards the neighborhood. So this is probably about 14 to 15 feet taller than the finished floor of the barn structure. I know it's a little deceiving, and when you walk it,
Okay,
you may
can
not.
I stop you for a
Yeah,
second?
go ahead.
So
Sure.
you're saying that your 15-foot drop, in layman's terms for me, is because the barn side is that level, and you will make everything that low.
Correct. In order to reutilize this structure, this building would sit at the same elevation as the barn. And so that would facilitate cutting back into this slope. But the nice thing with this setback is you have the ability to then transition that grade such that you don't disturb this property. If you go back to the original option here, what we had at this time was a large retaining wall that actually got to be about 15 to 20 feet tall in this corner, where the properties would be sitting above the fields and the fields would be sitting down below. So that's one of the things that it's hard to get across in this view, but because the dome is sitting down at the barn location, this is representative of that ridge line. And so the actual height is likely a little less in terms of sitting in terms of prominence. We're not placing the dome on top of a structure where it would be even more prominent. We're actually placing it about as low topographically on the site as we can allow, simply because the horse barn existing is at that grade. So this is going to be, just for perspective, this is probably going to be a good 15, 20 feet lower than the grade sort of up here where these trees are. So you'll get some additional screening effect.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So the vegetation line, or the tree line buffer, I was out there over the weekend, just walked a lot of the property. So the existing, like some of the people said, it was older, and also I walked over. Can you go back to the screen that shows the entire property with the hockey rink right there? Okay, so right to the hockey rink, if you go to the right of it, there's that little circle path, walking path through the trees. Okay, so Saturday when I was over there, observed a few things. There's hockey stuff going on, and up close there's a lot of noise, and looking at the structure, and I kind of think I see why there's a lot of noise. I walked back on that little circle path, which is past that very shallow tree line. I say shallow, meaning there's a few trees here and there. But as I was walking back past that and observed, I did all this in the rain too, if you appreciate that. I noticed a couple of things. How close the gentleman's house was. He spoke in June 6th or June 5th or whatever about the noise. But I noticed something different happened after I got past the tree line. The noise subsided a lot until the PA announcer came on. And then it was just, if I lived there, that PA announcer would be unacceptable to me. So why I digress in that was why I'm bringing it up, because that little bit of tree line shielded a lot of sound. So on the existing tree line we have, there's conversations of how much is on the property already versus the neighbors and all that. Are you planning to talk about what you're going to do extra, taller stuff, more wider?
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Well, first of all, I think it's really important to juxtapose this with a 4-field plan that turns these fields long ways, because that can be done by right. We would not be at this hearing. none of this would be a point of discussion. And under that plan, all of this vegetation would likely get wiped out or seriously compromised. But in this plan, that's one of the things that we're really offering, we feel like is a strong compromise, is all of this vegetation gets to stay. And so number one, the vegetation stays. Now, I agree with, I think Todd may have mentioned this, some other neighbors. There are probably some thinner patches through here. In those areas, we would 100% commit to come back and review that and work with the neighbors to fully screen this. And he's also right, one of the other gentlemen, I think, made the point about times of
Can I
year.
interrupt?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
When you say fully screen,
sure.
Talking about depth, height, talk about all of that.
Both. So you're going to have, so part of right now is the challenge is some of these are probably deciduous trees. A lot of them are probably just they lose their leaves, so you're not going to get the full screening, half the year. So you'd be looking at pulling in magnolias, caldon or evergreens, cedars, some larger trees that stay green and lush throughout the year. And that would be the commitment along this line, that you plant some day one, some of those can grow very quickly. But again, the nice thing is when you leave that much vegetation on that property line to begin with, you have a lot less need to supplement. And I really feel like, again, if folks would understand that this plan, you would have fields within 10 to 15 feet of that property line. A lot of those trees may not make it. You would have a large retaining wall more than likely just to flatten out this much slope. You're not going to have the opportunity to revegetate. So it's a great question. I think it is really important for folks to understand that and realize the commitment made is an improvement over the four-field plan, which again would be done by right.
I apologize. Thank you so much. I got a question for, help me out for the legalities, either Don or the staff or the lawyer, maybe him. But on the findings of fact, the sheet, the second one down, the conditional use will not adversely affect other properties. The last line there, existing emergency access barriers to Spear Point Drive will remain in place. How can he say that? He doesn't have the authority to open and close roads. That's the city stuff. Help me out with that.
That's not a question that's appropriate for the height.
Well,
it's appropriate for the planning. It's appropriate for the planning commission.
Vote on these findings of fact, and they put in here.
If the height was half of what it was, you'd still have the same question relating to the emergency exit.
And Mr. Chairman, I can simply say our understanding from the city is there would be no desire to open that up for public use, and we are not asking for that to be part of it. So it would operate exactly how it is now. That's all we were trying to say.
In an emergency, you can drive through it.
Yeah.
Yes, emergency access only.
It's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
That's all for now.
Okay. Paul? Okay. You want to make a motion?
Yes. Can I speak first?
Pardon me?
Can I speak first?
Jim wants to speak.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's on. First, let me say I'm my feelings are hurt because nothing was mentioned about a former police academy membership.
Sorry, put your mic on.
It's on. Can you hear me now? But I will forgive you. Turn them both on. First, let me say that I'm a member of the board, along with my colleagues out here, and but I am a liaison for this committee. Okay, I don't have the voting power. I don't vote. God, I wish I did, but I don't. I don't have the voting power. All they let me do is say a few words at a meeting. So I wanted to make that to you, because I can't vote, and I don't want you to get mad at me, okay? Mr. Chairman, I have a question for, where'd he go? Yeah, you.
I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. I can hear you. I'm sorry.
Was the height Vegas brought up when you first presented this way back when, was that ever discussed? 25 feet, 30 feet, or what? Was it ever discussed?
So I think the short answer would be no, but I think the context around that is important because every time you go through one of these.
No, you said no. That's good enough for me. That's enough.
Okay.
So what made you change your mind and start asking for this favors?
Thank you. The context is important. We didn't change our mind. The dome was always proposed. When we started looking at the technical aspects of the dome, the size that was discussed, why it needed to be the certain size, why it needed to be the certain height, a lot of those conversations happened after the RFP was specifically awarded. That's when we really reached out to Horizon, had those conversations, fully understood the height, and then we started working with planning staff on what that entailed. And that's where we learned of the BZA process to come and request that variance.
Okay, it's getting late. I got to go home. You start out at 35 feet, and then you're going on up to 75 feet. Is that right? Yes or no? I thought
not that we started at 35, sir. We understood that the way that as Timothy mentioned earlier, the way that the height variance would count. See, again, it's important. We could have started the height at 0, right? If you started at 0, then you're asking for a lot less or maybe nothing at all. Okay, so that's why it was important for us to understand how staff was going to interpret that, because it's not a clear-cut definition in terms of where that 20-foot starts or where the average height is related to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to be respectful and answer that.
Can I go on?
Yes,
Can
sir.
I move on? Okay. When I read in the paper that TUSC stated, and I quote, "This location was the only location they could find that was not in the flood zone." Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That was going to mention that. Yes, that is the correct statement. Yes.
The people here that live out there, is that true? Is that the flood zone? That is a flood zone? I thought it was.
This property is not in the floodway or floodplain.
It's a flood zone.
This property is not in the 100-year FEMA floodplain.
You're wrong, though. It is in the flood zone.
No, this property is not in the 100-year FEMA floodplain, sir.
Okay.
Respectfully.
So now we're here talking about a dome variance over a soccer field because it's not in the flood zone. Is that right?
Correct. Drake's Creek's in the flood zone. The new rugby field area is in the floodplain. As we mentioned, Mary's Magical Place, that was moved. The hockey was moved because that was in the floodplain. This is the only public park that's not in the floodplain.
So I'm a little confused. How does being in a flood zone have anything to do with a dome 35, 75 feet height? How does it affect the flood? I mean, if we get a flood, it's going to blow that thing away. We're in trouble.
Are you asking about the gentleman's comment who was making the point that the height is related to how much water land? Is that what you're asking about? I'm not sure what your question is. I'm sorry.
I don't understand what you said.
Okay. Well, so one of the gentlemen mentioned that the height is specifically related to how much water falls. And I think he also somebody mentioned that we don't have bioretention in ponds. We do. If you look on the north side of that field, part of the reason we kept this is a stream buffer. There's a little dash line. These are bioretention ponds and detention ponds that would mitigate the storm. So everything here on this side of the ridge would flow towards the stream. We would capture that, treat it, detain it, so it wouldn't impact the downstream neighbors of that stream. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
That's okay. I'm just confused when you say a flood zone and then you talk about a 75-foot dome. What's that got to do with the soccer field itself? The dome is not going to move if it's flooded down here.
I understand. Are you asking why is it important to not have this facility in the flood zone? Is that what you're asking?
I think you're getting it now.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I'm dense. You can ask my wife.
No, I'm dense. Go ahead.
Yeah, so yes, insurance on this type of facility. So any structure that's in the flood zone would require insurance. Yes.
You're talking to an expert on insurance.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
So flood insurance would be required. So again, one of the conversations we had with the city is could we do this at Drake's Creek, for example? They have existing fields. All of that whole area, if you ever drove in, you see the transformer that's sitting up. That's the flood height. So all of the facilities in there are sitting down below in the floodplain. any structure would have to be insured, and something of this magnitude, the insurance would be astronomical.
Let me ask you, sir, and I don't mean to cut you off, but do you have any idea how many floods we've had in our city parks here in Hendersonville over the last 10 years?
Oh, I don't know the number. Yeah, I'm sure it's
okay.
significant.
Do you know they never had to replace any roofs on any of our projects in any of the parks? It's always the base, the floor. So that's why I'm confused about the dome and the floor and the flood zone, okay? That's enough, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'm through.
Okay. Do I hear a motion? I'm sorry, can't hear you, Paul.
I bring it up to a motion, we vote.
To
Either deny it or approve it.
You make a motion to deny it?
Or approve it, one of the two.
It's got to be one or the other.
Do you want to discuss?
I've made a motion to deny it.
You okay?
Yeah.
So the motion is denied. Is there a second?
Okay.
If I could just break in just a second. If you make a motion either to approve or deny, please include findings of fact or reference to findings of fact that are on that page 6. That the project either does meet the findings of fact or does not. Just include that with your motion.
21 for us. You said page 6. Page.
What's this page?
Well, I got like 2 packets together. I got same stuff but more words. I got page 6 and page 21.
Yeah, I believe it is in there twice. Yes, 21 is the same findings of fact, just with different responses on them.
Do you mean the would adversely affect other property in the area? Is that for your reason for denial?
Yes, right. Yes.
Did you get that, Tim?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is there a second for that? I'll second it. We'll have a vote. Those in favor. Do you have a question, Ty?
I'm just making sure I'm reading this one versus page 21, making sure they're both the same. And they are.
This right?
It's just not bulleted. It's just a complete paragraph.
Yeah. Okay. So it's been moved and seconded to deny. We'll have a vote now. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Do you abstain, Ty, or?
I vote aye.
You vote aye, so it is three ayes, and therefore it is denied. Let me say, no, please don't even do that. Let me say that from a personal standpoint, I hope to heck we get a facility like that. I hope it's not in the neighborhood, as close to the neighborhood, and that we can find an appropriate place to do it. That's just my personal opinion. Okay. Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second it. Okay.
You second.
We are adjourned.
Okay.